What are the hallmarks of a great boss? We can all think of people who have inspired us at work. We can also think of bosses who we really didn't appreciate at all and actually led us to move on in our organizations. But what are the attributes that actually separate out the great bosses from the less good ones? My colleague James Mantelow and I decided to get to the bottom of this issue. We surveyed 15,000 managers around the world, asking this exact question: what are the attributes, the techniques and tools that great bosses use? The findings can be summarized in terms of 3 concentric circles. The inner circle is managing yourself. In other words, it's about the things you do to ensure that you understand your own strengths and weaknesses, your own capacity to manage time effectively, your ability to cope with stress, all of those things together to ensure that you are actually spending your time on the right things and to the best of your ability. The middle circle is managing others, and we explicitly separate out managing tasks and managing people. Managing tasks is things like problem solving and decision making, very kind of functional activities. And typically those are things, of course, that most of us were already pretty good at before we became managers. Managing people is such things as hiring people, empowering and delegating work to other people, managing difficult conversations, getting the best out of our team. And of course, those are generally harder things to do because, of course, personalities and differences of opinion tend to intrude. But ultimately, managing tasks and managing people are 2 sides of the same coin. We've got to make sure that we do both of those equally well. The outer circle is managing your wider context. This means, first of all, building relationships with others within your organization, but outside your area of formal responsibility, your boss and your boss's boss, people in other departments. It also means building relationships with people outside the company, customers and suppliers and so forth. And it means being very conscious and aware of changes in the wider business environment to make sure that you're making the right strategic choices. Those 3 circles are mutually reinforcing. In other words, you can't be good at managing tasks and people if you're not conscious of how the business world is changing, and neither can you be good at managing tasks and people if you aren't even aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, because you're likely to emphasize the wrong thing. So these 3 circles actually fit together quite nicely. But the other point to bear in mind is that there are cross-cutting themes that any really good manager is aware of. One is what we can call transparency. In other words, being very open and thoughtful about sharing your ideas and your insights with others. Another theme is what we can call simplicity. In other words, deliberately trying to take away obstacles and try to simplify the processes through which work is done, because most people actually work much more effectively with fewer rules rather than with more rules. And the third is what we can call the sort of pursuit of meaning. In other words, the desire in all of these activities to try to link up what we're doing and how we're looking at the world with some sort of bigger picture goal, because it's well known that to the extent that you as an individual and the people around you see value in what you're doing in pursuit of meaning, the more likely you are to do your job efficiently.